My name is Becca and I work for Oldham County Fiscal Court as the Watershed Coordinator, and I'm going to talk about using watershed planning to improve septic system compliance. The learning objectives for this session and my goals are that attendees will be able to learn where to find and how to interpret water quality information for their area, understand the benefits of watershed planning, and gain ideas and resources for improving septic system compliance. And a little bit of background. Septic system compliance is managed by local health departments. You likely are all familiar with that. To my knowledge, failing septic systems are identified when houses are bought and sold, a homeowner is seeking an inspection, or a resident or community member identifies an issue and calls the local health department for them to go out and check. Fixing failing septic systems is the responsibility of the property owner. So fixes are approximately $3,000, where a full replacement can be $15,000 or more. So how can health departments improve compliance and reduce homeowner costs? So these are the steps that I'm going to briefly talk about today. Step 1, identify areas likely to have high rates of failing septic systems. 2, connect with the Division of Water or DOW and local stakeholders. 3, proceed with the watershed planning process. 4, use the watershed plan if you go that route to seek funding and implement programming. And then 5 is a really important step, and that is targeted education and outreach, which can happen immediately. So identifying areas likely to have high rates of failing septic systems in your area. I'm going to talk about water quality data as well as septic and sewer area maps. Okay. Many streams and rivers have standards for water quality. And when those streams are tested, they are labeled as either meeting, partially meeting, or not meeting those standards. So when we're thinking about identifying areas that are likely to have high rates of failing septic systems, with our water quality, we want to be looking at those classifications for bacteria, which is also known as primary contact recreation. That's that first slot there. You don't need to understand all of this, but just kind of getting into the water quality aspect and looking at areas that are not meeting standards for primary contact recreation, which is determined by bacteria, which is going to be higher in areas with high rates of failing septic systems. So this is a map from Division of Water, and they go out and they test approximately 14 or 15% of our streams in Kentucky. So there's over 90,000 miles of streams in Kentucky. They're only really hitting those main blue line rivers and streams. But looking at the classification for that primary contact recreation based on bacteria, 79% of those streams as of 2016 are not meeting that standard for water quality. So I believe I looked at this once, and every single county in Kentucky had streams that were not meeting this standard. So it's very likely, if you look into this, you're going to find the streams in your county that are not meeting those standards. And then from here, starting with that higher level view of Kentucky, now you want to look at your county or your area. So we can use the Water Health Portal to do this and zoom in. So I'm zooming in on Oldham County here because that's where I work. And we can see that these streams are classified. I mentioned streams either don't meet, partially meet, or do meet standards. So they're classified here in this map as either red, yellow, or green. And so focusing on Oldham County, I'm zooming in on where are the streams that are red, where are the streams that are not meeting those standards. And I find this little cluster here in the south part of Oldham County. And then I want to know more specifically, okay, what watershed are these streams in? So I can use this watershed viewer to determine that these are in fact in the Curry's Fork watershed. To give a little background on why this is relevant, with the watershed, all the area, all the rain that falls on that land, it's going to be running off and going to the same streams. So when we're looking at a stream, we want to understand the land around it and get that context from the watershed perspective. Because if you're not in the watershed, that water is running off to a different area, not contributing to the streams that you've identified don't meet water quality standards. The second piece here, septic and sewer map. So in Oldham County, our septic and sewer, our sewers are managed both by the Oldham County Environmental Authority and the LaGrange Utilities Commissions. So we have these maps of the sewer areas because if we're focused on septic, we want to pull out the areas that are managed by sewers. And then I have the map here on the left. This was actually a map developed in Oldham County for bad labeling, kind of bad septic areas. Maybe you already have something like this for your county, so you can contact your sewer utilities managers and maybe find, what resources they've already developed. But this one on the right here is really my end goal with these separating out septic and sewer. So that's our goal, is combining this also with the water quality data. There's likely a lot of other sources of water quality data besides the Division of Water. So Watershed Watch in Kentucky, that's a citizen science organization where volunteers go out and they monitor streams. So it's a public effort, and that data is widely available to the public. So maybe you can go in and look at this as well and see what's going on. Local MS4s also in your area might be monitoring based on their permit. So that's another thing to check. Okay, part 2 here. So you've identified your streams that have issues. You've identified the watershed or watersheds in your area that are having issues. Now you want to start to talk to some stakeholders and connect with Division of Water. So Division of Water, we have 7. I'm mentioning this word watershed. So basin is a larger watershed. You might have heard of the Ohio River Basin. In Kentucky, we have 7 watersheds or basins. And there are 7 Division of Water coordinators that each work within these basins. Not a big deal to totally understand this, but just so you know, there is somebody with Division of Water in your area who is working on these issues, whether you're connected with them or not. So I encourage people to connect with these personnel. Connecting with stakeholders. So fiscal court, again, your sewer system utilities, extension office, conservation district, I'm sure there's others. So start to talk to the stakeholders and professionals in your community about what you've seen, and get people together and determine the interest in maybe pursuing something like a watershed plan. So watershed planning and management. I love this picture here on the left. So if you're standing on a stream, obviously this is an extreme example, but this happens. There's a fish kill. You say, okay, what's going on? What happened? That's the watershed approach. You have to look around what's going on that land in that watershed to determine what happened to that water in that stream to result in killing those fish. So Kentucky has a lot of resources to help with this process. A big one is the Watershed Planning Guidebook. And I'm not going to go through all the details here, but this is where I would recommend people kind of start to dig into with the help of that state basin coordinator for your area. And very broadly going through this watershed management and planning process, building partnerships, characterizing the watershed, what's going on, not just what's going on based on what streams are meeting standards, what's going on with the land use, development, etc. Then you want to set goals. You want to design a plan. You've identified an issue. What do you have to do to solve that issue? Implementing the plan. That's what we're doing here in Oldham County. We have a plan. We're trying to implement it to not just fix failing septic systems, but to do a whole slew of things to improve the water quality. Measuring progress, did your plan work? And then from there, improving the plan. So that's the basic model for watershed planning and management. So I mentioned a couple times in Oldham County, we did go with the traditional model of developing a watershed plan. I say this is the traditional model because it's not required to make improvements in water quality, but it is what's required if you're going to go and seek funding through the Division of Water funding source that we work through. But it is time consuming, takes a lot of effort, a lot of committed stakeholders, but it is recommended if this is something you want to pursue, and you can really get like I said, a committed group of people together. That funding source, I'll just mention, is it's from the Clean Water Act. So it's technically Environmental Protection Agency. That's the federal level funding. that gets allocated to the states, and then that gets dished out to communities working on this watershed planning process through the Division of Water. With our Curry's Fork Watershed Plan, this is a very brief synopsis of what that plan does for you. So we know that we have this primary contract recreation impairments. Those streams are not meeting that water quality standard, both from Division of water quality testing for E. coli or bacteria, as well as further testing when we developed the watershed plan. Getting more specific information, because when Division of Water goes out, they're going to get those main blue line streams, but we want to look at the tributaries and the headwaters and have a better sense of where our priority areas are for bacteria. So that's what we've gotten. The watershed plan determined that a suspected source of this high bacteria levels of why those streams aren't meeting standards is because of on-site wastewater. Septic systems are failing, contributing effluent to the stream. So one of the logic solutions that this watershed plan identified is go out, fix failing septic systems, and education is a big, big part of that. A lot of people in Oldham County, they've maybe moved from Louisville or other areas where they have no idea they're on a septic system. They don't know what it is. They are proud when they say, I've never gotten a pump out. So the education piece is really, really important. Okay, 4 here. So using the watershed plan again to seek funding and implement programming. That plan becomes your justification for funding, not just through Division of Water, but for a lot of different grants. It provides a good basis to say, we have a problem, we've identified our solutions, we need money to help solve that. So using the Curry's Fork watershed as a case, this map here on the right, this is our priority pathogen area. So through that watershed planning process, they were able to determine where are the areas specifically in the watershed that we need to hit first as our priority areas. And that's what we did, is hit the most highest priority areas first. The funding also provided for my position, and a big part of this is education, as well as the funding to supplement the homeowner costs, which are very expensive to fix septic systems. Our partners for this have been Oldham County Fiscal Court through our Curry's Fork Watershed Program, again, my position, as well as Oldham County Health Department, who we couldn't do this without the support of the health department. So getting the program rolling in your community, we're in our second edition of the program right now, but really getting people to the table, to their computer, to watch something, to watch an education workshop, providing incentive. We've provided free pump outs as an incentive to get people to that. And the biggest incentive is really the potential to receive funding for cost share, and providing, at the moment, we're providing up to $7,000, up to 50%, up to $7,000 for a homeowner, which is a really huge, huge amount of money. The education piece, there's really 2 parts of it. So we want to hit on the water quality piece. Talking about a little bit what I've talked about with you today, failing septic systems leads to bacteria in the streams, leads to those streams not meeting water quality standards, talking about the real risks of sending your kids down to the stream after rain, having your dogs drink from the stream. They could get sick. It is a real concern, especially when we know those areas do have a lot of failing septic systems. And the second part of these workshops, which the health department covers, is really talking about what is a septic system, how they function, how to maintain your septic system, how to, what the proper things to use in your plumbing. And the biggest part here is that it is the homeowner responsibility, which a lot of homeowners might not be aware of. Just briefly, this cost share program. So we've collected applications. There's a ranking process trying to really hit those highest priority areas, locations that are going to be closest to the stream, looking at age of the septic as well as lot size. Then the health department, based on the ranking, goes out and provides those inspections for us. If they determine that, yes, there is an issue, then we work directly with the homeowner. They're required to get multiple bids just based on our Oldham County process. And they're required to upfront pay their portion, which is between 50 and 75%, just between the 2 programs. We've changed that a little bit. And the next slide here is the results. So between 2017 and 2022, we've used this funding to fix 41 septic systems. So this map is showing pump outs that we were aware of, septic system repair and replacement, and then inspection. So we're hoping to expand on this map, but we're trying to track inspections so we can maybe get a sense of areas that are good to go. They don't have as many issues. Okay, last piece here, I mentioned education outreach. I could fill 10 slides or more with this, but this is just really the biggest piece of getting that information out to your community, what to look for in your yard if you have an issue, determining if you have an issue, understanding your septic system. There's lots of resources both at the state and federal level to provide, reaching out through social media, Facebook, YouTube. And if anybody would like any of the resources, I'm happy. I have cards. I'm happy. Feel free to take a card or talk with me, and I'll send you anything I have to help you and talk about this process. So educational resources, our program outline, our program documents. I'm happy to share anything. And with that, thank you so much for your time. I know it was quick, but if there is time, I'm happy to take questions. It's a little bit hard to say, and one of the biggest challenges is showing improvements. So based on testing that our MS4 program did in 2020, we're not seeing improvements. 41 systems is really, really great and awesome, but there's likely a lot more that still need to be addressed. Oh, sorry. So the question was, what is the timetable for seeing improvement? So meaning when you go out and test, it might look better. Is that the question? I honestly can't answer that. This is a pretty rare program, and I know there's at least one other in this area with bluegrass green source, but I don't know the answer to that because there's so many factors that are contributing to the bacteria in the streams that we're trying to hit really the main septic areas, but there's also potentially sewer contributions, wildlife around our streams is a really big problem. So with the watershed, I know this really isn't answering the question, but with the watershed work, we're really focusing on what can we potentially help with and control. So we can't reduce, the wildlife, the waterfowl, and those types of things, but we can go out and help people fix their septic system. So if anybody figures this out, let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, good stories about particular we're all expecting crazy situations all the time. So, yeah,
A good story of a failing septic system. Honestly, I probably don't. That would be a question for our environmental inspector with the health department. I don't know if he's here today. I don't think so. I do know that there has been straight pipes, and those have been the highest priority. I hope there's not any more, but I feel like you all would have a lot better stories than I would. I don't get out in the field as much as I'd like to. Yeah. So this is all in Oldham County. So just based on those grants from Division of Water, we had one pool of money to go out, fix as many as we could. And now we're about to wrap up the next pool of money that we have. Yep. I don't. I've looked into that a little bit, and it's very, the question was if there's other programs for septic system repair. So this would be something I do talk to like our local elected leaders. This would be something that I would highly recommend if counties have a budget for, because this really has direct impact on, the citizens of your county. But this funding, again, it's specific, not just to Oldham County, but to the Currys Fork watershed, because that's where our impaired streams are that don't meet standards. We've gone through that watershed planning process. Now we have, you know, this physical watershed plan to be able to use to justify getting that money. Yeah, and that's Bluegrass Green Source is the other one that I know of, and it's really nice that it can cover a larger area. Mhm. Sure.
Have you worked with cattle farmers to help cattle out of the street?
I don't directly, but I do refer people to NRCS and the extension office. We actually in Currys Fork, we really don't have a whole lot of farming anymore. It's really the development that we're most focused on, but it's nice having other agencies to connect to, where I can focus on more of the developed side. Good question. All right, well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.